Hello, my name is Jupiter Stardust, galactic librarian and keeper of human history. What you're about to hear is a recording so old, so ancient, that only the first half exists today. In the future, all children are trained to create podcasts in space kindergarten, as we all know. As future people, it's unfathomable to us that someone could mess up Apple GarageBand this badly. But alas, this is what Molly Perry, a Homo sapien artist of the 21st century, did while recording this podcast with her friend, Emma Levitz. In the recording, you can hear where Molly made feeble attempts to save the audio from what was her biggest screw-up to date. Emma Levitz was a stone carver with a degree in sculpture from the Massachusetts College of Art and Design in Boston. She was also a leading member of Art Round Tennessee, a non-profit organization based in Cookeville that's dedicated to supporting artists in the Upper Cumberland. In the pre-galactic calendar year 2018, Emma opened her studio, Little Mountain Stoneworks. This hour-long segment is all that remains of a 2.5-hour-long conversation. A large chunk of time is spent discussing the genitals of different animals. Please enjoy this riveting snippet of two artists in the faraway year of 2024.
It's hard to find the balance of, sharing information without sharing it so often that people get desensitized. Mm-hmm. And also recognizing when you're sharing information in an echo chamber. Yes. Also, because sometimes I feel like I do that.
I absolutely do that. And whenever I'm doing that, especially if I post on closed stories, mm-hmm. I'm going into that fully being everyone agree with me now.
Yes. No voices of dissent at all.
No. Voices of dissent will be shunned from the close friends circle.
You must agree to have the green circle.
Speaking of Instagram, it's weird what people see and what they don't, because it seems like the things that I'm most proud of and actually want attention on, there's no views, especially on my story.
Yeah.
There are some days where I'll have an Instagram story with 120 views on it, which for me is big.
Oh yeah.
But then whenever I post one of my posters that I made, it's okay, 50 people saw it. Whatever.
Yeah, anytime I spend a really long time filming myself in the studio and making a reel, which I have spent all day on, I'll get some views. Yeah. And then I'll post a video of my dog, mm-hmm. and it's 10 times the amount of engagement.
So you have fallen susceptible to the reels.
I have.
I haven't gone all out yet.
Yeah.
I might get there eventually.
I don't know how beneficial they are.
Supposedly they're super popular.
I don't know how beneficial social media engagement is when you're an artist all the time.
True.
I think some of it is a myth.
Yeah.
I think the times that I've had the most engagement have not led to any more sales, really.
Yeah.
Or I'll get one sale maybe, but I'm just not sure it translates enough for the amount of hours it takes to make good content sometimes. Or it depends on your medium, I guess.
To come up with the idea, to record everything, to be your own editor.
Yeah, splicing it all together and
yeah.
God.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
One of the most popular reels for the Molly Made Friends podcast Instagram was, I think I used the hashtag Squishmallow.
Okay.
Because I made a little video about my friends having to fight tooth and nail to get this Squishmallow from Five Below one day. That one has 2,500 views on it.
Yeah. You hit the Squishmallow community.
Maybe I should just start tagging random things.
Yeah. Just tag Squishmallow in every episode.
I think I will.
Just do it. We could find a way to mention it in every episode.
We just did.
We just did. Sponsored by.
Yeah. This episode with Emma Levitz is sponsored by Squishmallow. In fact, actually, I think this is a good starting point. Now that we've been talking for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Hey Emma.
Hey Molly.
What's up? You're Emma Levitz. Tell me about that.
I am she.
Yeah.
Yes. What do you want to know about it?
Well, okay, first of all, how did you come up with the name Little Mountain Stoneworks?
So Little Mountain is the name of a little mountain in Crawford, Tennessee, which is where I moved when I first moved to Tennessee and where I've been living for, I just moved last year, but I had been living there since 2016. So it's just Little Mountain, and it kind of reminds me of like this part of Tennessee also, just being in like the foothills kind of.
So where are you from originally?
Vermont.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I saw, because I did a little snooping on your website before this, I saw that you have your stuff in like a couple stores, but one of those stores was in Massachusetts, and I was like, maybe she's from somewhere else.
Yes, I grew up in Vermont, and then I went to college in Boston, so I lived there for 4 years before moving here. So, yeah, definitely New England raised.
Ooh.
But I don't like the winter, so
I don't blame you.
had to go a little further south.
Did you miss the clam chowder?
It's not the number one thing I miss.
Did you miss Wawa?
We don't have Wawa where I grew up.
Oh, okay. Is that just like a Philly thing?
I don't know. I feel like I've only seen it in Florida.
Oh, really? Did you
know?
Did you know that Florida has a brand of gas station called Giddy Up and Go?
No, I didn't. That seems like what Buc-ee's should be called.
Absolutely. Which, the spelling of Buc-ee's, I wonder if they did that because there's other things called Buc-ee's already.
I have also wondered this because it makes me want to say like Bucksy or like Bucci's.
So, did you go to art school?
Yes, I studied sculpture at Mass Art in Boston.
Is that what your degree is in, sculpture?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
So, what was it like to go to a university that was just for the arts? Was everyone there super cool?
It was, yeah, you know.
About that.
Everyone was cooler than everyone. I don't know. I think I've never felt more uncool than I did at art school, probably.
Oh, really?
Because there's just so many, like, hyper creative people, and then I suddenly was like, am I creative at all? I really liked going to art school. I honestly think it's probably the only way I was going to stay in school for all 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
I think I just had really hit a point of like not wanting to be in academia, but I was really into my studio practice, and that kept me going.
So, whenever you're at an art school, do you have like English classes, or like the standard core classes that supposedly every degree has to have?
Yeah, it just kind of depends on your school. So the one that I went to, you declare your major your sophomore year. So your freshman year, you have to take all these like foundation art classes to learn like a lot of different types of art, sort of. And then you declare your major, and you have like your certain requirements within your major, and then you have certain credits of like general education you have to do. So, but it's like very minimal. It's like I think I had to do one math or science class the whole time I was in school.
That's nice.
And it was, math or science. And I took a science class called Animal Sex that was just all about animal sex and reproduction in various animals. So it was really interesting, actually.
What was your favorite form of animal sex to learn about?
Well, I learned that bats give each other oral for a while before they mate and are really into foreplay, and I thought that was kind of interesting.
That's hot.
Yeah.
That's cool. Did you learn about ducks and their, like, spiral penises?
We did. That part was a little scary. The bowerbirds, I think, was my favorite. Have you heard of the bowerbird? Okay, the bowerbird, I think they're native to, like, New Zealand. And the male bowerbird creates what they call a bower at the base of a tree, which is like it's like a little art installation. They will collect like certain leaves or sticks or flowers that are all the same color and arrange them in like a pattern at the base of a tree. And then the female bowerbird comes, and if she likes the design, she stays and like watches him dance, and then if she also likes his dance, then they'll mate. And I just thought that was wild that like they judge whether they like the design or not.
I think that's actually what it's like to date a graphic designer.
You are the bowerbirds.
Like, babe, do you like this?
There's like a really good like David Attenborough documentary about the bowerbirds, and he's like watching this one for a while, and he like goes up when the bird is away and like flips one of the leaves upside down and walks away, and the bird immediately comes back and flips it.
That's
like
cool.
They're like very into their visual pattern that they've made. It's just like really interesting.
That's amazing. And that's kind of like corporate coming in and saying, make this bigger. Make it pop.
Now dance.
Now dance, monkey. And then they show it to the client, and then the client just wants to go back to the original.
Just flies away.
And then you just have to forget that you did another couple hours of work for nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my science class at art school. It was very,
awesome.
very, it was a cool class.
Did you learn about hyenas?
I don't remember learning about hyenas.
Dude, can I tell you about hyena vagina?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, listen to this, kids. So, female hyenas, hyenas have really narrow pelvises.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a French bulldog. French bulldogs have been bred to a point where their pelvises are so narrow that they actually cannot give birth on their own, which, fuck humanity for doing that.
Yep.
They have to have C-sections.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's horrible. And so, hyenas, that's just like naturally occurring in nature for whatever reason, but their mortality rate for giving birth is extremely high. Like, if a female hyena gets pregnant, it's like a 70% chance of them dying.
Oh, wow.
And so...
that seems like a bad evolutionary
it's
development.
Really bad. But see, the thing is, their bodies, in order to protect themselves from getting pregnant, because for whatever reason, evolution saw that as the answer instead of just, making their pelvises wider.
A little wider, right?
Basically, the clit of the hyena basically grew so long that it was almost like a penis.
Okay.
And it kind of created this, like, kind of blockage in a way. So it made it really, really hard for male hyenas to impregnate females.
Huh.
And also, like, if you see hyenas in the wild, females freaking hate males because they're like, do not come near me.
Wow.
Because you could freaking kill me, dude.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's probably not the clit, now I think about it. I don't know, but it's like, it's one part of the vagina that has evolved to look like a penis. So...
the more you know.
The more you know. Wow. I'm so glad that I can talk about
This
that.
has become an informational podcast.
Yeah.
There's a YouTube channel called Green Porno, and it's this girl, well, this was like a decade ago when I watched them, so I don't know if it still exists, but this woman makes these really weird videos describing how different animals have sex, and they are wild. There's one on the ducks. Yeah, there's a lot of props and like it's very strange. We watched several of them in my class.
Wow, that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
I think that dolphins are the only species that do it for fun.
No way, primates.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. Well, I don't know. You're gonna have a biologist on now to answer all of these questions. But yeah, like bonobos are like.
Which love that name.
Yeah.
Bonobos.
Bonobos. I think that's how you say it. They like have a lot of like homosexual sex, and they have a lot of like sex that's not for reproduction, and a lot of just like physical touch between all of them.
Are the bonobos the ones that look like they're like nude little faces, kind of look kind of plasticky, and they have that big nose?
I think so. I can't remember.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of that scene in The Princess Diaries too, where they're going
Trying to remember which scene we're going for right now.
They're going through potential suitors for, was it Princess Mia?
Yes, Mia, yeah.
And they're going through all these princes from around the world, and they land on one, and they're like, ooh, he's cute. And someone's like, we're hearing that he's gay. And so everyone in the room, they like raise their fists in the air and they just go solidarity or like something like
what?
that. Like,
this was in Princess Diaries too?
Yeah.
Okay. That's so funny.
So, speaking of things that are funny, my friend Sam Starkey has a question for you.
Ooh, okay.
And the way that he wrote it made me think of like Patrick from SpongeBob.
Okay.
Let me find it if I can. Okay. Oh, okay. Sorry, Sam. You wrote it a lot better than the first time that I read it.
So your brain read it as Patrick.
So the first time that I read it, I thought that he asked, which rock best? So, Emma, which is the best rock?
Best rock.
Because you use a lot of marble, right?
I do. I like carving marble the best. I also work with limestone and soapstone. Marble I like working with marble because it's soft enough to like not drive me completely crazy, but it is hard enough that it holds like a really high polish still. Yeah. So I can still make it really shiny and get like sharp edges, which is harder to do on the softer stones. Huh. Also, a lot of stones, the dust is like all silica, and silica dust is bad to breathe in because you can get silicosis. Silica dust doesn't like dissolve in your body really, so like if you inhale it, it kind of just stays in there. So things like granite that's like all silica. Soapstone also, but I don't use power tools on soapstone, so I don't have to worry about that. But marble is calcium based. And so the only silica inside of the marble is like in its impurities. So the marble is just like slightly less toxic to work with in the long term. I mean, I wear a respirator, but I still just like don't want to be in a silica cloud all day.
I don't blame you.
So,
and besides granite, marble, I automatically think is the fanciest rock.
It's pretty. It's the pretty rock for sure.
I've seen that you've worked with like a Tennessee marble and then a kind that's from Georgia. Mm-hmm. So, okay, follow-up question from Sam, actually, because he asked two, and they're both pertinent. Mm-hmm. I want to read it. So,
read it as Patrick.
How you get rock. How do you get your rocks?
Tennessee Marble Company is in Knoxville, and that's where I source all of my stones. They quarry out there. The town is called Friendsville, where all the quarries are. So all of the pink marble that I work with is Tennessee marble that's quarried there. But they also, because they do like architectural stonework at their facility, they get marble from like all up and down the East Coast, and I buy their like scraps and stuff. I get marble from Vermont, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and occasionally a few other places.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I feel like, is it a It's not a quandary.
Is what a quandary?
It's not a foundry either.
A quarry.
Oh my god! I feel like that quarry is where they got all the marble to build the Capitol building in Nashville with.
Probably. There's Tennessee marble all over the country, actually. Quandary. Isn't quandary like a question? Yeah.
Like
I was like, what quandary? A quarry quandary.
Damn, sorry guys, that's pretty bad.
Don't edit that out.
I'm actually Patrick Starr.
Yeah. Hello, Patrick Starr. Yes, Tennessee marble is actually in buildings like all over the U.S. So there's buildings in Washington, D.C., like the National Mall has like Tennessee marble on it, and like Grand Central Station has Tennessee marble. It's like a really good architectural stone because it's not as soft as like white marble. It like lasts a little longer on the outside of a building without getting like white marble will degrade over time, and like you'll start to see like effects of people like walking on it or something.
So will it kind of like develop little indentations from where people have tread in the same spot over and over?
Yeah, there's this place in Vermont called the Carving Studio, and it's like an artist's residency place, but it's located in an area that has all these old quarries that are not operational anymore. But there's an old building there that was like the quarry worker building, and the whole building is made of marble, like white Vermont marble, which is really soft, and the stairs going up the buildings all have like a huge like indent in the middle, just from like 100 years of people walking up and down them.
Whenever I think about marble, I actually went to Versailles.
Oh, wow.
Whenever I had just graduated high school. And I remember there is a room in Versailles that I think uses the majority of the specific kind of pink marble like in the world. Like most of it is in this one room.
Oh, interesting.
In this palace. And I think I'm too American to enjoy Versailles. So I was like, look at this corruption. Look at them not feeding their people. This is ridiculous. This building is stupid. But that room was like this atrocious display of wealth. But I think it was like this reddish pink marble. It was cool, but it's interesting that, I don't know.
That's like all great European architecture, or really probably all great architecture, but I mean, like every like Gothic cathedral that is like, you know, the most beautiful building that you've ever walked in is like absolutely just pure corruption. I mean, that's like generations of underpaid or unpaid labor and no working conditions, and like, yeah, I mean, it's like art and architecture for a while was only commissioned by a monarchy or the church. So yeah. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of haunted spaces.
And I say this is corrupt, this is gross, blah blah blah. But if I had my pick between, a beautiful cathedral or some Soviet Eastern Bloc apartment architecture where everyone is equal, I'm gonna pick the cathedral.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to reconcile with, that you're like, this is objectively way more beautiful, but at what cost? Yeah.
So, speaking of cost, I feel like this would be a really expensive medium to get into. Is that true?
No. Well, okay, no, but with a caveat. No asterisk, yeah. So, one reason I started carving stone really, seriously, is because it was one of the most accessible sculpture mediums to me at the time. So in college, I mostly was doing cast iron and cast bronze and steel fabricated sculpture and metal and big heavy things. And when I graduated, I realized if I wanted to continue doing any of that, I was going to need thousands of dollars worth of equipment. And it just seemed really unrealistic. But I had an angle grinder and a rock, and I was like, I've learned a little bit about stone carving. I can make this work. You can do a lot with just an angle grinder and a saw blade and a rock. That's my main tool is the angle grinder. And I don't use any big equipment. Everything is just a handheld tool. So other than my air compressor, I don't have a tool that costs more than $300.
Oh, wow.
Which for power tools and stuff, that's not, versus if you are a glass blower and you need a furnace to melt your glass, so it's not that expensive. And marble is only expensive depending on where you're buying it. So if I were to go to an art supply store and they were selling a block of marble, it would be unbelievably expensive. But I buy scrap marble from a quarry, so I pay by the pallet usually, unless I'm getting a specific stone cut. But marble is only expensive to ship or to get custom cut. If you are getting someone's scrap, usually they don't want to have to deal with it. So you can get a lot of scrap stone at a pretty good cost. So I would say the caveat though is that stone carving is not popular in the United States really, as compared to the other sculpture mediums like ceramics or jewelry or any of these other things. So accessing the information and figuring out what tools you need and how to acquire stone and how you should actually carve it, it's that information is not super readily available. And so I feel that's probably the more inaccessible part.
Okay.
But I think that's just maybe here. I feel there's more stone carving in older countries that have more stone buildings and architecture and stuff like that.
Have you been to Europe or anything to really explore that?
I have been to Europe. I haven't been to Italy or anything. I would like to see that for sure. But I know that just from seeing other creators online and looking at residencies and stuff that stone carving is a lot more prevalent in the sculpture world in Europe than it is here. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite sculpture?
Favorite sculpture?
Yeah.
Well, I have a favorite classical sculpture.
Okay.
Bernini's Apollo and Daphne is my favorite classical marble sculpture. so like Apollo and Daphne, the story is kind of interesting. I don't know. Apparent like so. Well, do you want the story? Okay.
Tell me.
So Daphne. So Apollo, as the story goes, was walking by Cupid one day, and Cupid was like stringing his bow, and Apollo, who was like a soldier, made fun of Cupid for stringing his bow that is not for fighting, you know. And Cupid got mad, so Cupid shot an arrow at Apollo while he was looking at Daphne and did not shoot an arrow at Daphne. So Apollo became like obsessively in love with Daphne, who did not love him back. And she loved like being in the woods, and she loved nature and the animals. And so then, like, in sort of a darker part of the story, he's chasing her because he's obsessed with her and, like, has, like, uncontrollable lust for her. And so she is, like, running away from him. And I can't remember what god is her dad, but she, like, calls out to her dad and is like, save me from Apollo. And he turns her into a tree so that she will be free from Apollo. And so in the sculpture is like the moment she's turning into a tree. So like she's reaching up and like turning into a tree, and then Apollo is like reaching for her. Oh, wow. It's a beautiful sculpture, and so technically like blows my mind that anyone was able to carve this at the time that they did with like rudimentary tools. And yeah.
I feel like my immediate answer for who is this person's father when it comes to Greek mythology is Zeus.
Yeah, it may have been Zeus.
He's everybody's daddy.
He's everybody's daddy.
That's cool. I'm gonna look into that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful piece, but yeah.
What's your stance on modern sculpture? Is there any that really speaks to you the same way?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of like contemporary sculptors that I'm really obsessed with. Like classical sculpture inspires me from a technical perspective because I just think it's amazing how they made the marble look like that. But like the content is all Greek mythology or like early Christian stories or something. It's like I'm less interested usually in like, or less inspired by the content, even if it's interesting. But like modern artists, I really don't follow a lot of stone carvers. Actually, I probably should follow more, but I guess all of these artists are probably maybe still alive working, but like probably toward the end if they are. I'm not sure. But like Louis Bourgeois, Anthony Gormley, Richard Nonis, I don't know, these are just sculptors off the top of my head that like have been really inspiring to me.
Whenever I think of sculpture, I think I do have the tendency to think about classical art.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's lots of really neat sculptural works, today.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it's almost like it's a medium that doesn't get as much love as it should. Or at least no one, not as much conversation about it.
I think that, well, I do think a stone carving specifically, everybody always goes to like Michelangelo or like ancient Greco-Roman sculpture or like something. I think just with like all contemporary artists, I think there's not enough education about living working artists, like in general. Like when we learn about art, we learn so much about art history and so much about everything before 1930, like before World War II. And then there's like a paragraph about like pop art, and then yeah, and then like I don't know, and I just feel like the like living working art world is like you only know about it if you're like deeply interested in it, and that's like your thing.
That's really interesting, because now that I'm thinking about it, I really think that there's only conversation around contemporary commercial art.
Yeah.
Like a lot of older advertising. Like, whenever I think about the discussion around art, like, post, 1930, it starts with, war propaganda posters and pretty much continues down that avenue of graphic design and advertising.
Yeah.
Like, I can't really think of much besides this, like, commercial element where art is becoming intertwined with things that you can buy.
Right, that's interesting. I think,
or even, like, used as a political tool.
Yeah. Yes, political art is definitely... I think what gets, like... I think we've done, like, a disservice to the art world at this point, where, like, to participate in the modern art world, either as the artist or a collector or a viewer, you kind of have to be in this, like, weird in crowd or something. And I think, like, the way that, like, non-art people are looking at art and the art that they're looking at, I'm always like, why is that the thing? Like, Jeff Koons is probably, like, the most famous sculptor, and I hate everything that he's ever made.
Whenever I see those dumb balloon dolls.
God, I hate them so much. Or, like, Damien Hirst, or, like, I don't know, it's like, maybe there has been merit to, like, some of the pieces, but, like, I'm so, like, I don't care about, A, their perspective, or, like, B, like, what they're making, and they've become so much, like, a brand.
Absolutely.
That, like, it's not, it's like they're products at this point. Like, they have a warehouse of people making those pieces. The concept was made years ago, and at this point, they're just...
The work is not the art.
No.
Their persona is.
Yeah. And I hate that. But for every, like, Jeff Koons, there's, like, a Louise Bourgeois who's, like, she's super famous, but, like, I think her work is amazing. Like, she's most known for her, like, big spider sculptures that she did. But she has, like, a whole body of work of these things called, like, the cells. And they're these, like, weird little rooms that she makes. And they are so weird and, like, visceral and, like, emotional, and they are talked about so much less than, like, the Jeff Koons, whatever, balloon animal thing.
It's digestible.
Yes, super digestible. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, I read a book about a year and a half ago. It's called My Year of Rest and Relaxation.
Okay.
And it's about this girl in New York who is, like, the queen of the shallow. Like, she goes to art school specifically to be a curator and be in that world of this, of where everything is a performance.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what these artists are making. It just matters who they know or, what they're saying that's crazy. Or, what they're doing. Like, the start of the book, she's working in this gallery, and she's pretty sure that she only got hired because she's hot. And she basically, like, doesn't do any work. And these artists will come in and hang their shows. And the guy that's in there currently, like, he works, like, with his piss. He is a piss artist.
Yep. Okay, yep.
And, like, she kind of points out this weirdly, like, sexual element that's present in a lot of contemporary art right now. That's really just kind of, like, cheap and gross and weird.
It's like shock value will attract regardless of meaning. Yeah.
And, she's talking about him. It's just some guy who is quite literally peeing on a canvas. And that's the art. Which I think that his comment is, like, these people are pissing on art itself.
Yeah.
What the fuck art even is.
Yeah.
Yeah. People like that. It's interesting.
I think it's hard because there's a lot of, like, weird contemporary art that I do really like. And that, like, has, when I've seen it, has been, like, impactful. But, like, for every exhibit like that, there's one that I'm like, what is happening here? You know? I think, though, like, well, okay, like, once you're at the level of, like, buying Jeff Koons art, you're just moving your assets around to like lift your tax burden. Like, that's not, there's a certain level of art buying and collecting that is about assets, and it's not about the art or anything. It's about trends and investments, and yeah. And I think a lot of, like, not art people just see that, and so they're like, the whole art world's so pretentious. And it's like, okay, that's actually, like, it's a small group of people. They just, like we were kind of talking about before, they're kind of the loudest because they have the most resources. And so, like, you hear about the Sotheby's auction, but how many people are spending money at the Sotheby's auction? Like, very few compared to, like, how many people are, like, going to look at art just any day.
This is random. I had a professor at Roane State Community College. He was my literature professor. And he was obsessed with African art.
Uh-huh.
And yes, he is a white man.
Uh-huh.
And he actually bought things from Sotheby's, like, with relative frequency.
Wow.
And it's like, that's cool, whatever. But, like, I always thought that was so odd. I'm like, on a community college professor.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe a lot of people
I've been on the website before, because for whatever reason I've been looking at something and I'm like, no way, there's one of these for sale? And I'll click on something. I think the cheapest thing I've seen on there has been about $500.
Okay, yeah.
But, like, it does vary, it seems like.
But then you think of, like, the whole, like, Banksy at Sotheby's thing, or his, like, his stupid, like, self-destructing thing that became way more valuable when it was ruined. I don't know.
I think that the most valuable thing that's been sold at auction there was like $27 million. Yeah. It's like, at that point, we're just not on the plane of, like, reality or like. What sucks is that piece, I don't even remember what it was. I just remember the number that it went for. That's one thing. That's horrible. That piece is never going to see the light of day.
No.
It's going to be in some douchebag's in-house apartment.
Or not even. It will be in their basement collection that's climate controlled, which for storage, but no one sees it. Yeah. I know. It sucks because I, like, love fine art, and I simultaneously, like, struggle with the idea of the fine art world, and, like, I think it's so off-putting to people that they're unwilling to open their minds to it, sort of for valid reasons, but, like, I've had pieces of art that have made me cry or given me goosebumps, and I, like, want everyone to have that experience. But I think, like, I don't know. I think that fine art, especially contemporary art, like, it's really, like, I think focusing on, like, your interaction with it and your experience with it. And I think people will get annoyed because they'll go into a gallery and they see, like, a big canvas that's red, and they're like, ugh, I could do it. That's not art. And it's like, the art is not, look how well I painted the canvas red. Like, it's like, it's how you feel and think around it, and, like, or even you getting mad at it or something, and, like, it's like the concept and, like, the impact on you is more important than, like, the red canvas. I just think that's, like, a hard connection sometimes.
Also, I feel like people are so unwilling to read the museum or gallery blurb.
Oh, I have such mixed feelings about the museum or gallery blurb, though.
So, I feel like I probably definitely saw this on TikTok, like everything else in my life.
Yeah.
There was this girl who was in a museum somewhere, and she was looking at some contemporary art, and she saw this, like, big hanging, like, almost like a quilt, kind of. I don't remember what the piece was exactly, but it had been stained in some way. And it was like this big, hanging, almost like wet brown thing. And there was a little blurb beside it, like every other piece, whatever. And she said the thing that everyone says, I could do that. Not just a wet piece of fabric.
My child could do that. Yeah.
And this person stitched that video with an explanation of how the piece was made, but also what it represents. And it was like this really cool, powerful thing. And I'm like, whenever I'm in a museum, I'm reading that stuff.
Yeah.
I want to know.
Yeah.
Because I do think that it does help with my interpretation of the piece to an extent, but also I'm genuinely curious. I mean, that's why I'm there.
Yeah.
I don't understand these people that walk into a room and glance and leave.
Right, and they're just like, I don't get it. But they look at it for 2 seconds and don't read any tags or anything. I think, like, there are a lot of exhibits that I have needed the blurb on the wall to, like, to land it. Yeah. But I feel like everybody should look at the show first. I've seen so many people at an art gallery walk into a gallery and without looking at anything, they read the blurb. And that blurb is often written by the curator, not the artist, depending on the art gallery. But, like, it's not usually, like, an artist statement. It's, like, a curator statement about the show. And I do think it's important and gives context. But, like, I think you should go look at the whole show and then read the thing versus... You know, it's kind of like seeing the movie before the book or something where it's like...
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So, that's crazy. Okay, now I'm thinking about the relationship between the artist and the curator. So, can an artist, a living artist in this instance, if their work is being displayed somewhere and that place comes with curation... Can they tell these people, like, I actually don't want this included, or let me work with you to have a blurb, or this is what I want to say, hang this up and that's it? Or do people honestly just hand this over for someone else to interpret? Because I feel like that's putting a lot of trust in someone that's not you.
Yeah, I think it's probably different gallery to gallery, and probably also kind of depends on, like, the scale of the museum or gallery. Like you know, when I've done a show at, like, the Silver Fern, like, I did, like, one group exhibition there, and, like, I wrote the blurb, like, you know, it's like a smaller gallery, and, like, you know, you as the artist have a lot of control over your space. But, like, if you have a show inside of the contemporary wing of the Museum of Fine Arts or something, like, I think there's a lot more control over that space probably, but I don't know exactly. I know that so at my college there was a gallery at my college that was, like, not for student art, that would have, like, professional art shows, and they had this one exhibition that was all based on, like, color, and this one artist, their whole, like, art was they had all these bowls that they would, like, set up in a room full of raw pigment. And so it was just these, like, bright piles of pigment. And that had to be installed there. And, like, the gallery attendants, like, set up that show. Like, the artist sent really explicit instructions and all the materials, and then, like, the gallery sets up the piece. And so, like, I think, like, bigger name artists and stuff, like, there's, like, they might not even be there when the show is installed, like, certain installation work. But then there's other artists that will, like, hand do every single thing. Like, I cannot remember this girl's name. I saw this show at the Frist a few years ago, Nashville. This girl, I don't know, she had done these, like, weird, cool installation sculptures with, like, taxidermy and all this stuff, and, like, all these, like, tiny little things that were all, like, hanging. And she, like, goes and painstakingly, like, does all of that, like, herself at these shows. But, like, certain artists, maybe that's not important to their process. I don't know.
like, I'm imagining the process of shipping something like that.
Yeah.
And creating those instructions. Well, that'd be interesting to talk to someone who's done, like, a really big thing like that.
Yeah. I'm so hands-on on my art and so uncomfortable outsourcing things to other people's hands, even when, like, I should just outsource part of it or something. It's so hard for me to, like, get past that as a, like, crafts person, I guess, but I don't know. I think the artist's hand is maybe not, like, always the most important thing to the piece of art, I guess, but yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, speaking of your craft.
Yes.
I wanted to know, because I see you at events around town, you got your little table set up, selling stuff. Do you have a goal for your work right now? Like, do you have some, like, ambition to, like, be in, like, a group of stores, or maybe reach, like, chain status, big brand status? Or do you want to do, like, gallery stuff?
Yeah, I think I'm at, like, a big turning point right now, actually, with my work.
Okay.
I'm, like, in the middle of figuring out how to change what I'm doing, I think. So, in 2018, I started Little Mountain Stoneworks and started, like, selling, like, bowls and plates and mortar and pestles. Mm-hmm. In college, I never made a single functional thing. Everything I made was just, like, art for the sake of art, like, you know, and I, like, really loved that. But, like, obviously going to art school, most of them don't tell you anything about how to make money doing that or, like, do that as a career. So, like, when I graduated, I was like, well, I don't know how to actually turn this into, like, money. I don't know. And then I just, like, was carving stone, kind of messing around, and I, like, posted a picture of a bowl I made on Facebook, and this chef that I used to work with messaged me and, like, wanted to buy the bowl, and I was like, you want to buy a piece from me? Oh. And then it was sort of like, oh, people will buy stuff if it's, like, maybe a functional thing. So I got, like, very into that, and I like doing that, but, like, I think at this point I'm getting a little bored of the functional stuff. And I'm feeling a little stuck in it, where it's like, you know, there's certain stores that I, like, stock with stuff, and there's certain customers I have that, like, contact me at Christmas every year, or whenever they have, like, one of their kids is getting married, or, like, something like that. And they want the functional stuff because that's what they know of me, you know, and then I feel like I get stuck doing that. And I really want to make, like, art again, and I miss making art. So I think my goal for, like, the rest of this year in 2025 is to build up, like, a whole body of work of just sculpture and, like, no functional stuff. I mean, I'll still do the functional stuff because I need to, like, make money in the interim while I'm figuring that other thing out. But yeah, I don't know. So right now I just have a short-term goal because I'm just trying to, like, switch it up. Yeah.
That's cool. Do you have any, like, current inspirations or drives to create said art? Is there anything that you have in mind?
Like the type of work, sort of. Yeah, well, I really like figurative work. Like, I draw a lot, and I keep, like, trying to find hobbies that I'm not monetizing, because, like, I get, you know, it's hard to, when you spend a lot of time doing a thing, you're like, oh my god, I, like, need to make money, or I can't do this thing anymore. So drawing, I, like, keep as my, like, I've never tried to monetize it. But in my drawing, I, like, do a lot of, like, weird kind of, like, abstracted figures, or, like, I don't know, like, people in some form. And I want to, like, turn some of those into, like, three-dimensional forms. There's a lot of things that I've honestly been wanting to make for years that I just haven't felt like I had the skill to make. Yeah, where you're like, I really want to make this thing, but I really don't want to make a shitty version of this thing. So, like, I gotta be good enough to make the thing. And I don't know. Yeah.
I was telling my friend Tanner yesterday, not yesterday, some other day. But
Yeah.
not yesterday. I have this thing where I will have this clear vision in my mind of what I want, what I like, whatever. But because I know that I do not currently possess the skills to execute that thing, I don't even try.
Yeah. I feel that way, but I think it's okay. Like, I think it's okay. Like, I don't know. That's why I was also making the functional stuff for so long. Like, I was really new to stone carving when I started carving when I got out of college. Yeah. And, like, I didn't want, you know, if I wanted to carve a person, that's really hard. And if I barely even know how to use the tools, it's like, let's start with a bowl, you know? That's, like, pretty much just technical skill at that point. Like, yeah. I don't know. And, I mean, I've been doing it for, I guess, like 7 years now. And now I'm just starting to feel confident enough to make some of those things. And now I've been kind of trying to make some of those things, and I'm like, man, I can barely make it now. Like, it's really hard. Like, no way could I have done this like 5 years ago or whatever.
I'm picturing you in like a little Michelangelo outfit with a big floppy like, Italian hat or something. Or I'm picturing you like SpongeBob at art class where he's got a big pillar of marble. And, like, looks at it,
oh, yeah.
And hits it just right.
And it's just, like, perfect. That's how I feel about, like, ancient sculptures. I'm like, how did you do that? Yeah, no, it's a lot more, like, loud noises and dust and, I don't know, not a fashionable outfit.
What I remember from my art history education, I feel like there was a technique something like that, where basically you look at the stone that you have as is, and then you kind of either sketch on it or kind of sketch on paper this kind of 3D image, but sketch on the outside a flat 2D rendering of what you want to cut away from the stone.
Yeah.
Is that how you work?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's like, this quote is kind of corny, but like there's like a Michelangelo quote. I don't know if he actually said it. Supposedly there's a Michelangelo quote where he said like I saw the angel in the marble and I carved till I set him free, and like people always talk about how Michelangelo like saw writing that down. Yeah, so people always talk about how he like saw the form in the marble and they're like, oh, that's a sign of, like, a master carver. But, like, you literally have to do that if you're working from a block. That's just, like, material removal like, 101. It's like...
No, like, you don't get it.
You just have to do that. Yeah, like, you have a block of marble. That's all you have. Unless you're starting to use, like, epoxy and stuff. It's, like, that's all the material you have. And as soon as it's gone, it's gone. And so it's, like... But, yeah, if you're making a rounded figure, it's, like, there's no way to really... translate that. So yeah, it's like on each side I'll end up just kind of making some weird version of it in 2D to know what to cut off, I guess, to start. Yeah, it doesn't look right for a long time. It looks like really bad for a long time. It's like in like subtractive carving or like subtractive sculpture in general, like they talk about like breaking it from the block, where it's like the moment that you've carved enough that it doesn't look like it came from a block anymore. And, like, that's really far in, you know? It looks like it's just, like, of a block for a long time.
How much time do you typically spend on a piece? Like, maybe, I saw that you have these really cool serving platters made out of marble on your site. How long would something like that take you?
I'm really bad at timing myself, because that requires a certain level of organization that I don't have. But yeah. There's a lot of, like, variables that change the time, like, pretty drastically. So, like, if I want to carve, like, a white marble serving plate that's a pretty simple oval shape, I could do that in an afternoon easily.
Okay.
But if I want it to be like a wiggly shape, that could double the time just to sand all those, like, because like a, what is it, convex? I don't know. An indented curve is like way harder to take so much more time to like polish. And then if I did the same thing in like the green marble, which has like serpentine in it, so it's really hard, that could take me like 3 times the amount of time. So it just like depends on a lot of things. The plates I have in my store right now, the like wiggly kind of orange ones, that marble isn't quarried anymore. So, which I just found out recently because I was at a show where there was another carver who's from Georgia, and he pretty much only works with Georgia stone. And he was like, where did you get this stone? Like, they don't quarry anything that looks like this anymore. So sometimes, I don't know. So then I feel more precious about it, and then I just take a longer time to work on it because I'm more afraid of, like, breaking it. I don't know.
What's it like to work in a medium that can just go away like that?
Like, just break?
Yeah. Well, just break, but also, like you said, they don't quarry it anymore.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, it sucks when you find a stone that you're like, this is so nice to work with and so beautiful, and then you realize it's like impossible to source more of it. But luckily, there's always like a lot of other stones that are going to be at least like comparable in some way. But that is really common with quarries because it's like you mine a quarry for a certain amount of time. Well, okay, how they used to do it, now a lot of things have changed because of like the environment and worker protections. Quarrying is very different now, but it used to be most commonly you would pit quarry, so you just make a huge pit in the ground and then like all the workers are at the bottom of the pit. But the issue when you're just going down is that you usually eventually hit a spring and then it fills with water. And so like there are some quarries that, if it's like a really active quarry, if they hit a spring, maybe they have a system that they can pump all of that water out somewhere. But a lot of quarries have been abandoned when they hit the spring because it's like, oh, it's filling really fast, everybody get out. Some quarries have like all this machinery at the bottom of the water because they all just had to evacuate. Now they tend to quarry into the side of a mountain, so it's a lot safer and you're not like going so deep into the earth. Yeah.
It's kind of funny why it took them so long to figure that out.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. I don't know. It is odd when you look at like the pictures of the old ones and you're like, man, people just keep getting smashed by huge things of stone falling on them. And then it's like, what if they weren't trapped in a pit and instead could just run the other way? Yeah, we have like, I worked at the marble company for a little bit. And instead of OSHA, they have MSHA, which is like the mining version of it. Yeah. So I like went through MSHA training and everything, wow. And there's so many safety precautions that you just wonder what it was like working in a quarry 200 years ago.
That poor dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any spooky quarry stories? Did you hear any good ones?
Well, let's see. At the carving studio in Vermont, that's a really cool like little place, like just that. They just do like their artist residencies, but all the little quarries there are inactive now and mostly full of water. And in the old like marble house that I was talking about that you can see like where everybody walked on the stairs, inside one of the rooms there's all of this like graffiti and like carved into the wall like stuff that like the workers had carved in. And there were all these things about like some guy, I forget his name, but like John or something, killed by a flake, R.I.P., killed by a flake. And we were like, what does that mean? And apparently like they were pit quarrying, they were using like explosives to quarry, but it shook the wrong area and a huge boulder came and crushed this guy. But because there were no worker protections at the time, they had the workers carve like steps into the boulder and they just like walked over him, but they like would refer to that as a flake, even though it was like a huge boulder. Terrible. So I'm really happy, like, I know where all my marble comes from, and I know the conditions it's all mined under. Like, I feel very wary about getting stone from countries where I don't know how they regulate or if they regulate their workers, Yeah. Pretty wild, yeah.
Well, okay, before I ask the next question, would you like a break?
I can take a break for a second. Okay.
And that, my friends, is where this ancient recording ends. We can never be sure of where the conversation was going, and now their voices have faded to the glimmering sands of time. In the words of 21st century Homo sapien actor Johnny Depp in the 1997 film Donnie Brasco, forget about it.